Hello everyone, and welcome to our virtual session. I'm super excited to have you here on board and about the amazing session that we are going to have, inshallah, today, especially with our guest speakers, and in which we are going to cover and to examine actually the question related on, or the question on how digital technology affect marriage. My name is Khalid Al-Nama. Hi everyone again, and I will be moderating the conversation a little bit about housekeeping. Please feel free to chip in if you have any question during the session. We will have also a separate session later on for Q&A, and you are free to raise an icon if you want to, if you have any question. And also we'll share with you a small and short movie during our session. So please welcome with me Mr. Lee from Malaysia. And also, please welcome with me Dr. Ryan from Hamad bin Khalifa University. And please welcome with me also Aisha from UK. She's going to share with us her personal story. So first of all, I have a question for Mr. Lee. It will be a kind of generic question. I would like, as an expert on family issues, can you shed light on how digital technology affects marriage in Malaysia from your perspective?
Well, thank you very much, and congratulations once again for organizing this fantastic event.
Thank
I
you.
think the best way to answer a question is to ask a question. The
Yeah,
question is, how many of us own a smartphone, a tablet, a
yeah.
computer, or for that matter, all of the above? And I suspect that every one of us, technology plays such a significant part in our daily
Exactly.
lives. And I think all of us would have a hard time living without technology, isn't it? For example, this conference would not have been possible if it's not for technology. In the 14th
Mhm.
century, when Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing machine, there was a lot of
Mhm.
good and bad that came out of the printing press. I grew up in an
Mhm.
era where I learned from print and paper, and I know that I have appreciated reading so many books from the print.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I also have received a lot of printed documents and pictures, which I don't think I should be looking at. Uh, Same thing with technology. There's going to be so much good
Mhm.
and so much bad out of technology. We appreciate the value of technology, but we don't frequently consider the negative consequences and the results
Mhm.
from technology. Number one is, I think, when there is an overuse and incorrect use of technology, like the incorrect use of the printing medium, it would lead to
Mhm.
isolation. Most significant danger of technology is when people begin to feel isolated. The paradox
Mhm.
of it is that technology is meant to connect, to communicate people all over the world. We have learning abilities, we are able to conduct businesses, we have webinars like this, we have presentations, we keep in touch with one another because of technology. And I think all these are okay, it is good. But when we begin to spend too much time online or with the social
Mhm.
media, and when it's being overused, and that is substituting personal interaction, then technology is placed in question. Are we giving up real life with a virtual life? Then the consequences of it can be adverse if there is an overuse of it. It can damage personal relationship. I remember
Mhm.
we in Malaysia actually had a campaign called No Mobile During Dinner. And I think many of us would have witnessed this scene when we go into a restaurant and you see everyone seems to be on their personal devices rather than communicating with one another. So we decided to
Mhm.
partner with more than 100 restaurants and say that if you can get your customers to put their mobile devices in a box during dinner and begin to
Yeah.
interact with one another, we even came up with conversation starters so that people will
Mhm.
actually communicate. And if they are able to do that throughout that 1 to 2 hour meal, give them a 10% discount
Mhm.
or offer them a free dessert. And it was such a successful campaign reminding people no mobile during dinner. Because one of the most significant and important things or meaningful communication takes place when we are actually having dinner with one another, isn't it? You bring it to the realm of an intimate relationship like a marriage, the consequence
Yeah.
can be worse. You know, when we select the phone, the TV, the tablet, the computer over our loved ones, I think there
Yeah.
would be a stress on relationship. It actually
Mhm.
alienate affection. It leaves the partner feeling unappreciated. And when that is stretched over months and years, there will be great conflict, there will be dissatisfaction, and it would actually
Mhm.
affect the relationship negatively. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we do not use technology. I'm just saying that we all should be
Yeah.
aware that overuse of it could cause us to become isolated. Why don't we keep the devices away and put it on the silent mode or ignore it? Because in the
Mhm.
overall scheme of things, our text messages, social media, and browsing the internet worth
Mhm.
hurting the ones that we love and we care about. It is a very subtle way that technology can affect our marriage if we are not careful of it. So maybe I end with another question. What or
Yeah.
who is the first thing that we greet every morning? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's such an important note, to be honestly. I think we will carry on our discussion with Dr. Ryan. Dr. Ryan, I think how do you see the impact of digital revolution on the institution of marriage, and in particular on marital relationship?
Well, thank you for inviting me to this conference. And
Thank you
just to
very much.
start with, I'm a computer science researcher. I'm from software engineering background, and we do software actually to catch people attention. So I am partially guilty for ghosting the problem, if you see my point here. And my and my interest in the what we call digital addiction actually stemmed from the fact that we developed technology to do exactly that, to immerse people, to make people more attached to the technology. So I had that ethical concern whether what we are doing is actually right, if you see, whether when we
Mhm.
design software like TikTok, for example, or Facebook, or whatever, and that catches people attention to the point where they forget about their reality or real life. But then
Yeah.
actually, after researching this topic for around like 8 years now, the digital addiction and internet addiction, we probably exaggerate sometimes the role of technology in people life in terms of the harmful effect. Because maybe the technology is not causing that effect. Maybe the technology is just enhancing that one. So if a couple, for example, they're not having a good relation, each of them will go to
Mhm.
social media, for example. If you see, it's just like an escapism mechanism, basically.
Yeah.
So maybe the technology is not really to blame fully there, and to just differentiate between the internet as an enhancer of the behavior, meaning that it exacerbates some negative behavior, or it enhances
Mhm.
certain behavior, or it actually transforms it completely. And I would say
Yeah.
it enhances the behavior. It's just moderate a bit the behavior, or it affects the behavior. But what I'm
Yeah.
noticing actually here with the social media and with the digital media here is that the volume of information, the possibility of social comparison, the possibility of
Mhm.
envy, the possibility of the normative influence is huge. So you can always and all the time you have that flow of information coming to you. You compare yourself to others. And you make
Yeah.
people with low self-esteem who are slightly depressed. They go to social media and they feel even more depressed because they see other people posting positive news and so on. And the issue with
Mhm.
that is like social media, like Facebook and like the others, they actually deliberately do that. It's not like in a malicious style, but the algorithm works like that. If people are putting likes on something positive, it will become more popular and it will become more visible
Exactly.
to others. And as a couple, if you have some problems and you see other people putting happy pictures of themselves there, you may think the whole world is happy except your home, if you see. So
Exactly.
that sort of things that it can be actually detrimental to marriage life. There is a Dutch concept
Mhm.
in the Netherlands called Nixon. And that Nixon means that
Mhm.
you enjoy doing nothing, if you see. You basically do nothing. You allow your thoughts to just flow and you refresh your thoughts about them. And with technology now, we are not able to do nothing. There is always something to do. There is always some device to look at. And it's not really letting us reflect on our life. I mean, other phenomena as well, I would say, uh, related to new phenomena in the digital world. There's a concept called second life. And that actually goes a lot of
Mhm.
issues in the marriage life and even in the ethical and even legal cases, like a
Mhm.
husband or a wife is having another character, for example, online, even if it is an avatar, even if it is without their real picture, it's just an avatar representing them, talking to others. should we consider that differently from their real character in real life, going and talking to others, if you see what I mean? There are new phenomena that the digital spaces have created, and we started to question ourselves how to treat them. If you see the new questions, we don't have answers for them, and they are actually creating a lot of argument in marriage life. Last point is that some research showed that married couples, they have at least one argument per week about the use of social media. If you see one serious
Mhm.
argument about the use of social media, so it looks like a point of conflict between the couples. Not to mention
Yeah,
the issues with kids and also how to do the digital parenting of kids. That's
exactly.
a separate issue, that one.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ryan. This is was, to be honest, this is was very valid point, and you have actually give us a couple of examples to show us the pros and cons. But listen, let us listen to Aisha from UK. She will share with us her personal story, and that could be something amazing. I'm expecting to listen to something amazing, to be honest. So over to you, Aisha.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you
Alaikum
for having
salam.
me. So, I actually met my husband online, alhamdulillah. So that's been positive. And I think with most things in life, there's a positive and a negative way to use things. There's a positive way
Yeah.
to use a knife, to cut fruit, to cut vegetable. There's a negative way to use it as well. The same with social media, the same with technology. There's a positive and a negative way to use it. Meeting my husband through an online app, Match, was obviously very good for me because it gave me the opportunity to meet more different kinds of people, open my scope. And as a convert to Islam as well, I pretty much discovered the deen through technology too. So I put a lot of
Hmm.
my conversion down to the fact that YouTube was there with scholars like Mufti Menk, alhamdulillah, and all these amazing scholars that helped me learn about the deen. So for me, technology helped me become Muslim, helped me find my husband. So, like two of the biggest things of my life, the best things that happened to me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used technology as a bridge for me to get those things, alhamdulillah. So I think there definitely is a positive outlook out there. But touching on the
Okay.
negative, and I think my husband and I, we've understood there's negative aspects, and we have
Hmm.
sort of made a few rules because of those. Like we don't have a TV in our house, alhamdulillah. We've left
Hmm.
that, and we have like we track our usage of our phones to make sure we're not overusing. um, we don't do mindful scrolling, so we both have Instagram accounts, but we have the app deleted on our
Hmm.
phones. So we only re-download the app if we're going to post something, and then we delete it again. So we don't sort of find ourselves doing this mindless scrolling and letting Instagram determine what we're going to see that day. We try and make sure we're mindful with our phones, our technology, so we can choose what we're going to see. So it doesn't kind of choose for us, because then that's when negative things start coming in and you start seeing things
Exactly.
that are maybe bad. So I think being mindful with your content is something that we implement into our lives, and it's really, really positive for us. And I think as well, another good thing is we've turned off notifications on our phone. So we're not going to be sort of in the middle of a meal and like a notification comes up, and we're not going to be, you know, in that situation.
Well, Aisha, thank you very much. This is a really very positive story. Then I think we have to pause a little bit to share with you our shadow film.
Okay.
Well, I think was one side of the stories. This is actually a very negative aspect of social media. But going back to Mr. Lee, can you share with us the key topics program directed at married couples should focus on? Kind of programs you would suggest?
Yeah, I think the marriage relationship is such an important milestone in all of our life. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
many of us are entering into the relationship without being much prepared. You know, we have actually
Mhm.
done a study in Malaysia many years ago on people who have rated a high satisfaction level in their marriage life. Among
Mhm.
other things, one of the things is that they have gone through some form of pre-marriage education, rather than
Mhm.
just signing on the dotted line and say that, you know, we love one another. And therefore, sometimes the pre-marriage education program, we should take a certain period of time, help us to really
Mhm.
understand one another better and help us to discover one another more before we really enter into a marriage relationship. You know, sometimes we discover some of the things that we are shocked after we get married. Can you imagine if you are not even prepared for that? And actually, one of the main causes of divorce that we
Yeah.
have found out in Malaysia has been the lack of understanding between husband and
Mhm.
wife, whereby we entered into a marriage relationship thinking everything is going to be a bed of roses. But obviously, when reality strikes, we find that we are marrying somebody who could be very, very different from us. So I like to suggest that it is very important to go through pre-marriage education. There are many online assessment as well to actually
Mhm.
assess not so much of a compatibility test, but more of the ability to understand one another better and to address issues that needs to be addressed. Because we could have grown up from a home which is totally different. We could have grown up in a home whereby the family is really a social being. You know, they just like going for parties and just enjoying being with people. But you could be
Mhm.
attracted or marrying someone who is
Yeah.
rather not so outgoing. And therefore, if you are not prepared for the kind of relationship, there could be a lot
Mhm.
of problems that can arise from it. So we do stress a lot about pre-marriage education. And in Malaysia, for example, we do have a course called Khusus Perkawinan, which is actually preparing people to get married. And it's over like 6 chapters looking into the area of communication, conflict resolution,
Yeah.
understanding one another. The other thing which I
Mhm.
think sometimes is underemphasized is marriage enrichment. We
Mhm.
feel that once we have signed on the dotted line, everything is going to work out well. But all of us know that divorce rate is increasing in many, many countries. In fact, some people
Mhm.
are not even divorced, but they are living totally separate life. You know, our
Yeah,
car,
exactly.
we have to send it for a checkup once a while. So why don't we actually do a checkup? Put a check on our marriage relationship. There are many authors who have written book on marriages, and they themselves would actually go for a marriage enrichment weekend once a year, just to get away to strengthen the marriage, to assess themselves. And in Malaysia, focus on the family in Malaysia, we do have a few soft applications which help people to
Mhm.
actually assess their marriage and see where are the areas that needs to be addressed. We do organize date nights. You know, sometimes we date one another so much before we get married. After we get married, we
Yeah.
continue to date one another. But when the children comes, dating one another seems to be a vocabulary that we have not used for many, many years. And for me personally, I focus on the family. One of my saddest experience is actually when
Yeah.
a couple have been married for 25 years, coming to us and said
Mhm.
that they want a divorce. And when we begin to
Mhm.
explore more, we realize that this couple has invested so much of their time, energy, resources, and effort to bring up the
Mhm.
children. And when the children has grown up, married, and left home, they realize that they were living together with strangers because they have not been working on their relationship. And to me, it's really sad that, you know, sometimes we have not spent time enough to work on developing and cultivating and strengthening the marriage that we
Mhm.
have. It's important to realize that as we grow older, we are going to change
Mhm.
and things is not going to be different. In fact,
Okay.
people say that it's good to marry an archaeologist because an archaeologist like things that are older.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Actually, you have raised a very valid point regarding, preparing the couples before getting into a marriage relationship by educating them and increasing the awareness level in the society itself. I think this is one of the fundamental issues what we need to focus on. I think I want to go back also to Dr. Ryan. So if we want to focus on also the challenge that married couples they can face in the digital era, how do you propose to overcome those difficulties?
Actually, I mean, my answer is related to what Lee said and what Aisha as well said about that. And what was mentioned also earlier this morning, the pre-marriage education. And I do think actually some digital literacy and some
Mhm.
compatibility in the digital habits is also needed, if you see. So we look at
Yeah.
compatibility between people in their habits, in their norms, and so on. But do we really look at their compatibility in the use of digital media, for example? I'll
Mhm.
give you an example, and that came across in our studies in the past, that the privacy
Mhm.
perception is different between the husband and the wife. You see, so
Mhm.
you see, for example, one of them is taking picture of the kids and posting on social media, while the other see that is forbidden. You shouldn't be doing that, if you see. So
Yeah.
perhaps we have to upgrade a little bit the
Mhm.
definition of compatibility to also be
Yeah.
inclusive and to also include the digital habits and the digital life, including privacy, if you see.
Mhm.
The other point which I would like to mention is actually related to what Aisha mentioned, is about being mindful, if you see. Being mindful that actually social media is like any intervention in life. It is actually is taking resource, and that resource is very scarce. The resource is our attention. And if we spend our
Yeah.
attention on social media and forget about our partners, is might actually lead in the long term to impact, to lack of emotional bonding in the family, if you see. But then the question would be to be mindful of what, if you see. To be mindful
Mhm.
in the sense of being mindful about the mechanisms employed in social media, or being mindful about our own mental state, if you see, of our own relation. So we are
Mhm.
doing research like around 8 years, 9 years now, and every day we are discovering something new. So every day we discover, for example, like games, social media, the gadgets now might actually trigger
Yeah.
certain behaviors subconsciously, if you see. So the more we discover and research, the more we can tell people what to be mindful about, if you see. To give you an example,
Exactly.
so that's actually a research now we are doing together with a couple of policy institutes in Qatar, including DIFI, to look at the effect
Yeah.
of immersion in social media, immersion in games, to emotional bonding in the family, if you see. Whether actually we could say that parenting in the digital age needs to be upgraded, if you see, so that
Yeah.
we develop new literacy and new digital habits online to just
Mhm.
maintain the emotional bonding within family at the same level, or the level that we want we want it to be. The other thing that I could say, people develop certain norms now in the
Mhm.
digital age, and these norms might not be, I would let's say, certain perceptions about the digital world, and they might not be true. If you see, so it's misperception. So in the recent research we have done, everyone in the research, or in the sample we have surveyed, thought that others will get offended if you don't answer them instantly. But actually, when you
Yeah.
ask them, do you get offended if somebody is not answering you instantly? They say, not necessarily, you see, or no, I would imagine that the other person is busy, you see. There seems to be a bit
Yeah.
like of misperception in the digital world, and that's really affecting the frustration and the anxiety of people. So, back to the point of Aisha, to be mindful, I would say we need additional research. We still need some more knowledge to see what to be mindful about, apart from the basic stuff that we all know about. The notification is about the content online not being so much representative of the reality and all of that. But we are still in a very early stages in that space.
Well, Dr. Ryan, thank you very much. I think I will go over to Aisha. Aisha, do you consider your experience as a successful experience in terms of meeting your partner, date, or something like that?
Sorry, my connection went a tiny bit. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, actually, do you consider your personal experience a successful experience while connecting to your partner at the early stage of your marriage?
Oh, definitely. Well,
Yeah.
we met during COVID times. So, we were living in a time
Okay.
where we weren't even able to meet. So literally all of our initial conversations were through messaging, through voice and video chats. And alhamdulillah, we did get to meet just before the
Yeah.
lockdown happened. But after the lockdown
Alhamdulillah.
happened, that was it. All of our conversations were online. And
Mhm.
to be honest, it did become difficult because it's not
Mhm.
easy trying to get to know someone online when you don't actually get to be with them. And we would sometimes forget what it's like to see each other, to, I guess, be around each other. And
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't easy, definitely. But alhamdulillah, as time moved on, restrictions lifted a little bit more and we did get to see each other and we kind of
Exactly.
remembered then what it was like.
Aisha, just going back to Dr. Lee, I think he mentioned something related to educational program, premarital educational program. Would you recommend that for new couples before engaging in a solid relationship?
Definitely, 100%. I think that is an incredible idea. And I think it
Yeah.
comes with everything. Education is the key. And how can you expect
Mhm.
someone to know something if they've never been taught it, if they've never found out? And you can't just expect
Mhm.
people just to magically know things if there's not a system there where they can learn and find out. And getting the opportunity to learn what's good, what's bad, what's normal, and what's not.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're in situations and we think they're not normal, like arguments, for example. Arguments are normal, and understanding
Yeah.
that some things are okay, some things are not okay, and having that support system 100%, it's an incredible thing.
Mhm.
I think for marriage, for parenting, for everything, we should have some kind of course we can do before we take these huge steps in our
Yeah.
life because they're important.
Yes. I totally agree with you. So, Mr. Lee, just I want to ask you one more question. Do you think that technology can bring people together and can fix their personal issues or problems, especially if it's there is like a conflict or heated conflict happen between a couples? Do you think that technology will be very helpful in terms of communicating and to have this dialogue, a peaceful dialogue through messages or WhatsApp?
Well, I won't say that you can resolve it 100% because many a times communication is more than just visual and verbal and
Yeah.
through sound. Many of it has got to be seen through your body language, and therefore that
Mhm.
physical presence of one another is inevitable. We can't run away. We are all social beings, right? No man lives on an island by themselves. Therefore, I think
Yeah.
when it comes to conflict, obviously the first step is to communicate. And if you have got no other
Mhm.
choice, but obviously you got to use technology or virtual means. But nothing beats being together and in person. Sometimes you just need to have that embrace, to feel that warmth, to feel that the person do care for you. I think
Mhm.
those things cannot be achieved virtually. You just need that physical presence. Yeah.
100%, I agree with you. Just I want to ask also Dr. Ryan from, I want to take your point of view because actually Mr. Lee, he have raised a very valid question regarding, having premarital educational program. But I would assume just to go to that extreme, do you think we should keep it as a mandatory license or mandatory educational program? Do you think we will face a resistance from our community? I see a big smile on Lee. So what do you think, Dr. Ryan?
I mean, compatibility is always on the benefit of both. A compatibility check, for example. I mean, nobody's going to
Yeah.
object on that, isn't it? So actually, if you implement it in a way which is humorous, I wouldn't say humorous in the sense of being trivial or being, but if you implement it in
Mhm.
a way that raises people curiosity, it might succeed.
Mhm.
So you may design a little game if you see, you ask people two sets of a question about the digital world, for example, or in this
Yeah,
situation, how would you deal with? And then in the end of this game, you show them the score of compatibility. Nobody's going to object on that if you see. However, having said it,
yeah.
people can be different and can be successful. So they might be different in their habits, what they value more, but they can still be a happy couple, if you see. But really raising awareness and bringing that to the conscious zone of the couple or is an important thing. Nobody's going to object in seeing the differences between them
Exactly.
and their partners. But when
Exactly.
dating compatibility might not be a right idea because people can be different and can be still successful.
Yeah.
But making it explicit is
Mhm.
beneficial.
Exactly. Well, I want to share this actually question with Aisha. Do you think do you think about the idea of having the perfect match? Is it exist anymore? And especially in terms of social media, do you think anyone could have the possibility or the chance to find his perfect match in social media platform?
Um, I I think so. I guess okay, in a way,
Yeah.
you can meet someone that ticks all of your boxes. Alhamdulillah, when I met my husband, he did, but some minor things were not there. But the thing is, once you get to know someone, once you get to be with someone, you guys grow together. We're not the same person for our whole lives. Well, I'm not this,
Hmm.
the person I am now is not the same person I'm going to be in 10 years' time. I'm going to change, maybe,
Yeah.
inshallah, for the better. But, being married to someone is a chance to grow with someone. And, I
Mhm.
constantly look for his good habits that I try and pick up. He looks for mine, vice versa.
Yeah.
And with the negative stuff, we work together to try and get rid of those things. But we're never going to be perfect. But I do think that you can meet someone that's there, in most of your boxes are there. You don't want to just go for someone that's a complete opposite. You want to find someone that does sort of meet your requirements, but you also want to be open and know that not what they are now is what they're going to be forever
Mhm.
because they're going to change. And maybe you can be that person to help them change as well.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with you. Actually, I've received a question from one of the audience. He said, he or she, what is the biggest lessons learned and challenge faced in your experience?
My experience from meeting my husband
Yes.
online.
Yes,
Oh, the
exactly.
biggest the biggest challenge is the biggest challenge, I guess, is not actually being with the person and having all the communication online. A lot of barriers can be created. We don't always
Hmm.
understand social nuances through text messages, even on voice, even on this video call right now. So
Yeah.
a lot of communication has to be done in person because we don't pick up on things as well. So that's definitely a challenge. It's really hard that way. But I think
Hmm.
if the person's worth it, you have to push through and you have to push to have that initial meeting because you just
Exactly.
don't know what you're going to get until you meet someone in person.
I totally agree with you. I think also there is another question from one of the audience, and that question I think I'll share it with Lee from Malaysia. Well, basically, it's how much is social media and internet responsible for pushing explicit content to promote stereotypes around marriages?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes. How much is social media and internet responsible for pushing explicit content and promoting stereotypes around marriages as being oppressive?
Yeah, I think it's getting more and more. If you ask me,
Mm,
everybody is striving on the whole technology world, the virtual world, and for them to
mhm,
push messages through the internet, through social media, you can see that it's getting
mhm.
more and more aggressive. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
somehow or other, people seems to be able to get into you without you realizing it. So I think if
Mhm,
you are able to be a bit disciplined and just say that, I think I really like what Aisha says, that you actually
yeah.
sometimes even remove the app so that you don't get those kind of push messages. Because if not, it's a very natural thing that when people send you something, you would like to, you feel good about it. You know, it generates,
Mhm,
they say, the hormone called dopamine. It makes you feel
yeah.
even addicted to it, you know, and therefore I think it's really a lot has got to do with self-discipline, that we do not
Ex-
get enticed by it. Yeah.
mhm. I agree with you. I think there is also One question which can be actually discussed also with all of you guys. I need to propose this question to Dr. Ryan. In terms of addiction, do you think that one actually people get addicted to technology and it separates them emotionally from each other, especially when we talk about the couples?
Yeah, I mean, the term digital addiction is not really formal, so we use it
Mm,
informally, if you say so. There's still debate whether we should consider technology addiction as a behavioral addiction, if you see. Also, it meets some of the criteria like conflict, like you are on your mobile phone and you're forgetting something else, which has a priority.
yeah.
It has other criteria, other symptoms like tolerance. You start with one account, you end with 10 accounts. You start with 10 minutes per
Mhm,
day, you end up with 20 hours per day, and so on. It
yeah.
meets some of the criteria of behavioral addiction.
Mhm,
But often there are underlying reasons, if you see. So technology by itself plays a role, the trigger, if you see. But actually,
yeah.
people do not go and play games just because I mean, the game is so smart to catch their attention. Often there are underlying reasons which lead to that behavior. Having said that, it doesn't exempt technology companies from playing their responsibility, if you see. It doesn't mean that if a
Yeah.
person have a low self-esteem or depressed, for example, and obviously
Yeah.
posting things online excessively, putting pictures from all
Mhm,
kind of all sorts, if you see, it doesn't mean like social media are not exploiting that. Actually, potentially they're even in like encouraging that in one way or another by the way they are built. So technology addiction is a very recent thing, and we are still unsure whether we classify as an addiction, but we know about problematic internet usage. So we say there is a problematic internet usage characterized by excessive, obsessive, impulsive neglect, and
mhm.
often associated with some harm. When we say harm in
Yeah.
addiction, we don't only mean the harm to the user, but also to their social circle, including their families. For example,
Mhm,
online gambling or online gaming, obviously, like
yeah.
neglecting kids and neglecting the family. So the harm should be also, I mean, could be also for the social circle there. And
Mhm,
back to the point about pre-marriage education, I think some sort
yeah.
of education about e-parenting as well will be needed. So most of the parents
Mhm,
now they tell kids put the phone off, if you see, but they don't explain why, if you see. They
yeah.
don't tell them what else they can do, if you see. So they say, well, this game is evil. What do you mean this game is evil? Why it is evil, if you see?
Yeah.
And kids nowadays are argumentative, and they fortunately they
You have to
develop some
justify
critical
for it.
critical thinking. Yeah, so they need to answer.
Exactly.
They answer the kids' question why this game is not good. Actually, there is some research which showed that some games, I would say research in the sense of like a solid research, but there was some claim that playing some games makes kids more creative. Whether that's true or not, we don't really know much. ABC. So telling kids stay away from the game or stay away from the phone might not be
Yeah.
necessarily very right in every context. We need to know what to stay away
Mhm,
from and what to stay close to in the digital world. It's like
exactly.
food. Actually, that's an example of that was given earlier. It's like food, basically. We like digital nutrition. We don't like just to
Yeah.
take anything that comes to us. We need to be selective in what we consume there.
Exactly. And this is actually very hard for everyone to stay healthy most of his life. That's why sometimes yeah, and we have different choices, in our life. And this is normal. Actually, we are a human being. And that's raised other question also for Mr. Lee. Do you think from your experience or from your expertise point of view, do you think that the modern technology can fix what they call the family's disputes or not?
Well, it certainly helps to give ideas because there's so much information that is available. It's again the wise use of it. I mean, if we have
Yeah.
got a particular issue, I think if we go online, there's really so much self-help that is available. And if we are willing to get help, that's already a positive point. But I think sometimes the important thing is that whatever help that we have received, we must put it into practice. Psychologists today
Hmm.
say that the greatest distance on earth is between the head and the heart. We have all the head knowledge, but we don't have the heart knowledge to put it into practice. And I think digital definitely help us to get a lot of information, but we need the heart to actually communicate it across to family members.
I absolutely agree with you. So just going back to, I'd like you to suggest like a kind of a recommendation or program recommendation or suggestion so we can take it forth.
Um, my biggest recommendation, I think definitely the education is very important. Um,
Hmm.
and I think through the education, I think teaching people these kind of like habits, things like turning off notifications, things like just these little habits that we need to develop, I think, with our phones, with our laptops, TVs, and everything, so that they're not taking us away from something important, especially your husband, your children, anything, because we're always seeking distraction and we don't want to be distracted
Yeah.
from important things. So I think the education and within the education, teaching us about mindful usage of technology.
Okay. I think just we have a few minutes, but do you agree on the idea to assess our relationship, to assess our marital satisfaction, like after a couple of years of marriage, between time to time? Do you think this one is going to bring the happiness again to this holy relationship between husband and wife?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess it's good. I think that helps, but any kind of gratitude helps. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala
Yeah.
made us in that way so that we are supposed to be grateful to Him and His gifts. And I think by being grateful to Him and His gifts, you're therefore going to be grateful to
Yeah.
your spouse and looking at their good parts and just the bad parts, help them with, or don't complain about it all the time if they're not.
Yeah.
Um, so like looking for the gratitude, looking for the good things, I think are definitely the most important.
I agree with you. I want also to go back to Dr. Ryan. Dr. Ryan, can you give me one policy that we could take it here in DeFi in terms of developing like a kind of program or policy to save to save the marriage?
Actually, we mentioned a couple of them during the discussion, but
Yeah.
potentially I can add one uh, about about whether difference in digital habits uh,
Hmm.
can be mitigated. For example, we always we talk about conflict in the marriage,
Yeah.
and we talk about conflict resolution. If you see, so
Hmm.
how to really resolve conflict about digital habits, if you see. That's something we don't really know. If I'm a counselor, for example, or like a sort of like family advisor or something, we don't really have
Yeah.
much knowledge about that, if you see. That potentially an area to explore in the future and propose
Yeah.
a policy at the directional level, whether we need something like that in the future.
Hmm. Thank you very much. One more last question with Dr. Lee, with Mr. Lee. I'm sorry. Do you think we have to educate the counselors, psychologists, social workers about the modern conflict which may arise during any dispute between husband and wife? Do you think they have to be
Oh,
updated most of the time?
oh, certainly. I think counselors definitely needs to be updated constantly because things are so fluid. They change so much. The
Hmm.
goalpost is different. The value system sometimes changes, and therefore, if
Hmm.
people who are in that field of helping people are not being kept up to date, they may actually be losing touch. They may not be really addressing the issues that are confronting individuals. So certainly, I think that they need to be constantly updated and educated. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It was a really very informative discussion. Alhamdulillah, there is no debates. It seems that most of us we agree on the same topics. We need to increase the awareness level in our societies, and we need to educate them actually about a kind of techniques to hold to stay together, to keep bonding, to survive in their marriage relationship. So thank you very much again for answering all of these questions. I wish you have a good day, inshallah. It was a pleasure to have you with us. And thank you all for attending and for sparing some time from your busy schedule. See you soon, inshallah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very
you.
Thank
much.
Stay safe.
you. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much.
Bye all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Keep